Duelist Advance releases on July 4th. With the meta-defining Justice Hunters archetypes still yet to be imported, this set throws the TCG into uncharted territory. My name's JaxLMS, and I know everything because they pay me to. Here's Medeus the Pure is a dark fairy that either searches or summons a power patron on summon and can reborn himself by shuffling back a monster from hand or field. Archmage Power Patron is an illusion that locks you to fusions while he's on board, can fusion summon an Archmage or Nerva as a quick effect, and searches an Archmage spell or trap when he's sent from hand or field to grave. Latera is a spellcaster that summons herself if you control an Archmage card, then adds one back, and during your opponent's turn can summon an Archmage card from hand or grave, then bounce herself. Graflayer is a dragon that summons itself if you control an Archmage, then sets a back row, and can pop an opponent's back row as a quick effect if you control 3 different types. Finmel is a level 7 warrior that gets on board, then draws a card, protects level 6 or lower Archmages from targeting, and if you control 3 or more types, quick effect negates and halves your opponent's monsters. Archmage Academic Arcane Arts Acropolis gives you an extra normal for Medeus, can discard a back row and declare the name of an Archmage to search it once for each name, but locks you into only summoning Archmages, Medeus, and whatever you want from the extra deck for the turn. As far as I'm concerned, all Vandalism is Assault, searches Medeus, can treat one monster as an Archmage for a fusion summon this turn, and can replace the destruction of Acropolis. Varnish Alteration either places Acropolis or searches any Archmage if you already control it, and from grave can negate an attack, then summon Medeus from hand. Masterwork Succession is a quick play fusion spell that you can banish from grave to shuffle back 3 names. Theorealize milks Medeus to fundamentally do nothing, and can banish itself from grave to change the type and attribute of a monster you control until the end of your opponent's turn. Awakening summons an Archmage or Medeus from deck, then Lingering Magical Meltdowns, and can banish itself from grave and bounce an Archmage to destroy an opponent's card. Archmage Deactorus is a fairy fusion of Medeus and an Archmage that can rotate a monster, negates and destroys an effect on field if you control 3 types, and when he dies he summons Medeus. And Nerva, the Power Patron of Creation, is a fusion of 3 Archmages that can also be summoned in defense by tributing 3 different types, can't be destroyed by card effects while a field is up, and can chain to the activation of an Archmage monster effect to replace it with Legalized Nuclear Bombs. This absolutely massive first wave is mostly a big nothing so far, so let's get into the thick of it, the nitty gritty, the popcorn kernel in your teeth that mysteriously disappears when you feel around for it with your finger. Medeus is a nice simple starter for this deck, being able to summon the so far 1 Power Patron to make Deactorus and then search the field spell, with Assault being able to search him and Fusion Deployment summoning him from deck. You have a significant number of ways to start with him, and with Foolish and Theorealize you can go -1 for a few more ways to find him. Theorealize, while not searchable, does have the added benefits of not being easy to interact with, maybe giving you a bit of early info on what you're up against, and making one of your monsters a light fiend to do a kind of uncomfortable Fiendsmith combo, complicated by the lack of a light fiend in grave and having a short window to go down sandwiched between the locks on the Owl and Academy, or to turn something into a wind-winged beast at the end of your turn for Featherstorm. You can also start by using Acropolis to search Graflayer, who can set Assault to get to Medeus. Needing to pitch a spell or trap gives the deck a bit of the old White Forest problem, but the good news is just 1 is sufficient to resolve City 3 times for all 3 names. Using the first search on Graflayer lets you search Varnish, which can search Awakening. Then by pitching Awakening, you can search Latera, whose effect to summon herself adds back Awakening, which you can then pitch to search Finmel. That'll leave you with Deactorus' Omni, Finmel's Monster Negate, Graflayer's MST, Awakening engraved to pop, and Latera with the ability to reborn the Owl, who can fuse himself and 2 more guys, into Nerva, whose effect has a few possibilities. At the point of his summon, Power Patron will trigger, attempting to search, but if your opponent has no response, which they very well may not even be able to under Awakening, you can give up the search and turn it into a board wipe. But he also could turn Graflayer's quite weak disruption into a far stronger one. On turn 3, any effect you attempt from any of of their summons to Deactorus turning something, can be traded for an absurd board breaker. Succession isn't as consistently a part of the board, but if you happen to roll high and have the chance to set it, it can summon Guardian Chimera as another disruption. So what's the damage here? Well, for one thing, your weak is all hell to hand traps. Negating Medius can fuck up a whole hand since he's not an art mage, so Graflair can't help you extend from that point. And also there's not really a good way to get Patron on board if Medius doesn't resolve, so it'll be tough getting to your best disruptions and that extra search. The only way to avoid these pitfalls is with the field spell giving you an extra normal so you can save your regular normal for Patron, but you see, that segues into this deck's biggest weakness. All your plays are massively telegraphed. To use the extra normal, you have to reveal to your opponent that you already have the field spell. And talk about telegraph, the field spell makes you tell your opponent what you're searching. On top of that, the 3-type requirement makes it difficult to establish a board at all if it's not the full board, so it's difficult to play around Fualos, Perulia, and Droll. And that full board, mind you, is not an unbeatable blowout combo board. It's more of a Blue Eyes tier mid-range with some pretty noticeable weaknesses. Deactorus and Finmel only negate cards on field, so you're defenseless against things like Nib. But let's take a step back and see the big picture. Snake Eye was unplayable on release. Scareclaw was followed up by Tearlament. World Legacy took a minute to get there. We're witnessing the beginning stages of what very well could be another game changer, so just keep your balls peeled for Archmage Poplar or something, I don't know. Lunalight Gold Leo can search a Lunalight on summon, then pitch a card, and when a Lunalight hits the grave, she can add it back to hand. Silverhound summons a Lunalight from deck when she's sent to grave by a card effect, but locks you to Lunalights while that monster is on board, and when a spell trap is activated, she can banish herself into Lunalight Fusion from grave to negate it. Lunalight Masquerade is a continuous spell that can mill a Lunalight the turn it's activated, and when you summon a Lunalight Fusion, you can add Poly back from grave, then you can pitch a card to make one fusion summon you perform this turn into a Miracle Fusion. Perfume Dancer is a fusion of 2 Lunalights that searches Luna, Space, Light, Perfume on summon, can bounce a Lunalight card you control to summon a Lunalight from hand, and can banish yourself from grave to make your opponent's monsters lose attack equal to their own defense. And Lunalight Liger Dancer is a fusion of Leo Dancer and 3 Lunalights that's unaffected by non-Lunalights, can attack twice, and can quick effect send a Lunalight from extra deck to destroy all your opponent's special summon monsters. This support gave Lunalight the added consistency needed to compete in a post-Brat world, while also branching out from its old identity by giving it a really strong archetypal payoff worth building towards. While Lunalight fusions were once chock full of effects that say when this card attacks and shit, Liger Dancer is a truly worthwhile boss monster, being both a Towers and a Raigeki. Alongside Silverhound protecting you from Evenly and Herald, Liger can be extremely challenging to out for most decks in the format, with anything strong enough to swing over it being susceptible to the board wipe. And on top of that, with your still potent rank 4 capabilities, you can end on Baguska, which Liger Dancer may not be affected by, but your opponent's monsters sure are. And on the topic of some frustrating side effects of the lack of restrictions that may have been a wise decision, nothing is stopping you from ending on 2 Liger Dancer. I'm already at my 9/11 joke limit for the year. With its soft once per turn Raigeki to force your opponent to find 4 ways to threaten Liger by killing 2 and then taking the third on the chin while the second tower still stands. They hit the fucking Baguska. Damn it! Gold Leo may seem like just a -1 Stratos, a respectable roll but nothing to worry about too hard, but if you read between the lines you'll discover it's Armageddon Knight that loses to Droll. Since you can search Martin or Silverhound and immediately pitch them, Leo can trigger their effects while also having the flexibility to instead search something like Tiger if you need an extender more than you need the card economy. But if for some reason you need both, like a late game simplified game state, your second effect can add back the very same card you just pitched, which in turn means you can also combo with Kaleido Chick to add back her mill. You can get Chick on board with Hound after binning her with Leo or Masquerade, and although it'll lock you to Lunalights, the lock washes off as soon as Chick leaves the board, so you can clear it by bouncing her with Martin, or as easily as, actually summoning a Lunalight extra deck monster, because, shit, there's a good one now. Perfume Dancer searching Perfume is good not just for the novelty of the unsearchable spell becoming searchable, but also because Perfume was unsearchable for a reason. This card is crazy. And the bounce can be used to loop back Tiger while summoning the Kaleido Chick you bounce with Martin, so you get both another mill and another reborn off that interaction alone. And Masquerade is both a good enabler for your grave effects with its mill, and an important part of how you make multiple Liger Dancer whose 4 materials might raise eyebrows at first, but between Kaleido milling and becoming Leo Dancer, Polly, searchable with Black Goat, becoming Miracle Fusion after being recurred, and Wolf naturally being miraculous, you have several ways to efficiently make Liger. The problem I've mostly seen from this deck that holds it back from the top tables despite making a truly unbreakable board is that it's pretty easy to hand trap. Imperm on Gold Leo can be pretty damning. Joel is still alive in Argentina. And what's more, even though Gold Leo, Masquerade, and Tenki are all starters, they're not all created equal and force you into more constrained lines as you make your way down the spreadsheet. So you can get pretty good results if you can protect your line from disruption, but you won't play through quite as much as something like Malice. Serene Psychic Girl can banish a card from hand on summon to summon a level 4 lower Psychic from deck but lock you, and can give an extra star to one monster you control per Psychic you control. Mind Procedure can be used as a non-tuner, can pay 2k on summon to search a teleport, normal, or quick play spell, and when he's banished can pay 1000 to come back, but he can only use one effect per turn. Hush Psychic Minister gets on board, and can banish himself and another Psychic from grave to banish a monster on field until the end phase. Prototype Psychic Blaster can pitch himself to summon a Psychic from hand or banished, and can pay 1000 and banish another Psychic from grave to reborn himself. Parallel Teleport tributes a Psychic to summon a level 7 or lower Psychic from deck or extra, but dings you for 1000 times the problematic level gap and locks you to Psychics. Teleport Fusion is a quick play that miracle fuses Psychics into a Psychic Fusion, and if an extra deck Psychic is destroyed, it can banish itself to revive a banished Psychic. Silent Psychic Magician is a level 5 Synchro Tuner that can be treated as a non-tuner, and on summon reborns a level 4 or lower Psychic, you can give it a level, but locks you to Psychic. Crossmind Archfiend is a level 8 that can quickly bring back a banished level 7 or lower Psychic, and during the battle phase contribute a monster to gain its attack and give you that much life. Psychic Blaster Mark II is a level 9 that can summon any banished monster, and can quick effect banish a monster from grave to banish a monster on field and gain life equal to its attack. An Absolute Axon Kicker is a fusion of a Psychic Synchro and any Synchro that can pay 2k on summon to banish all your opponent's face-ups, can't be destroyed by card effects, and any turn after it hits the grave, you can banish it to cheat out a level 10 Psychic Fusion. Actually, kind of a neat development seeing Konami doing what I can only call manually Dragon Linkifying another type. These cards have some pretty strong insular synergies as well as a lot of good options for archetypal splashes that give the deck a really unique identity. Serene and Procedure both funnel into each other, getting you to 5 stars of Synchro material laundered through Procedure's tuner fluidity, and an extra Psychic off of Serene's summon or Procedure's search. Now of course you could search either of the two new teleports to either sack a guy to trade it out for anything from a Kashtira to a Zeta, or set up a quick summon of Axon on your opponent's turn. Or you could search Assault Teleport. But the top 3 best search targets for Procedure are, of course, E-Telly, E-Telly, and E-Telly. It's a shame the second effect can't be used in the same turn, so you can even use Gold Sark as a starter, but that effect is perfectly fine, it's just a way to make use of Blaster's cost for advantage. Starting with E-Telly is even perfectly fine, since after summoning Serene and subsequently Procedure, you can just search another copy, since hard once per turns were still just the Gather Your Mind gimmick when this card was printed. From this point, you can pivot into a Punk Engine with Xiamen, so you could search Rising Scales and then make Dragon Drive by using Serene to make Xiamen a Procedure into 4s. This will let you search Minister, whose summon is even freer than that of Tracker and Wielder in this deck, and then make Fever on summon 5. Magician leads right into Blaster or Crossmind by bringing back Minister as a 4 or 3, and both of them have very similar effects to bring back a banished monster, meaning you can bring back Xiamen after banishing it with Scales. So in addition to Blaster's quick banish and Fever's negate, you can use Xiamen, Scales, and Deer Note to add Jiraishin and Lambda to your board. To trigger Lambda, you can use Minister's effect proactively rather than waiting for turn 3 to use it as a board breaker, so you can add Gamma or Delta to your disruption lineup. But while we're talking about Psy-frames, it's worth mentioning that Zeta and Lambda aren't the only lords you have neat interactions with. By making Omega, you can rip a card from hand and then bring it back with Blaster to rip a second card. The fusion lines are less consistent since there's only one teleport searcher, but Axon is a massive blowout, and if he's outed on turn 3, he can cheat out Ultimate Axon, who is perfectly fine, I guess, or Mutant Ultimus, who actually also doesn't do anything unless you're on a mutant engine. But you see, this is why they call me the king of transition sentences, because Teleport can also summon other psychic fusions like Synthesis for a pop. Maybe including a mutant engine is too much investment for not enough payoff, but including Procedure as an option in a pure mutant deck could be a significant boost to that deck on a casual level. And that's probably the most important takeaway, is that alongside the dedicated Psychic Sync combo deck that these cards facilitate, there are plenty of psychic decks that might enjoy an E-Telly Searcher or a quick Miracle Fusion, or an E-Telly for bigger psychics that all might want a closer look at the support. Vanquished Soul Holly Sue is a level 5 psychic that can quick effect reveal another VS from hand to summon herself, and either reveals an Earth and a Dark to steal your opponent's smallest monster, or a Fire and a Dark to summon a non-psychic Vol from deck. Vanquished Soul Start is a field spell that targets a Vol to search one with a different attribute, can protect a Vol monster by revealing one in hand, and sets a trap from deck if you control 2 or more Vol monsters during the end phase. Vanquished Soul Rocks is a rank 4 that you can slap on top of a Vol or Rock with the Vanquisher if a Vol battled this turn, docks your opponent's monsters by 8 if it has a Dark attached, gives Vol's 1000 if it has a fire, and can detach to pop if it has an earth. I'll stop saying Vol now, I've had my fun. So this support addresses some of the issues that Vol has long suffered from and gives it some new, unique plays. I lied, I'm still calling it Vol. Start may not be a starter, but it turns Mad Love into just as much of a starter as Raisin, where before her search targets were mostly just disruptions. Now she can lead right into the search of an earth to reveal for her quick effect bounce, or Raisin so that you can summon him from hand with rock and search a monster. But of course this means the same can be done in reverse, with Raisin searching Mad Love, making Raisin more potent as a starter, especially because Start gets you to Snow Devil, an important role to fill now that Mad Love is focused on searching Start. This, however, is reliant on getting 2 Vols on board, which is not actually a guarantee from just a 1-card combo. You're still largely reliant on drawing a fire and using Rock's effect to add back, rather than summon to get the attributes for Jiaolong's search or Holly Sue's summon. And while Sue makes for one more good earth you can easily play, fires are still a little sparse. This barrel's bottom has been scraped so clean we're cutting our lips on splinters like the chill low investment Rescue Ace package. But if you do open an attribute that works with the starter you open, you can easily set up a small, unassuming board, often within 4 summons, that on your opponent's turn explodes into the full suite of Vol disruptions through your Raisin and Jiaolong searches and your Sue summon. But Holly Sue has even more depth to her since her quick effect to summon herself can be used on either turn. So if you open her in another name, you can summon her during your opponent's first turn, and then if you drew another earth and a dark, she can steal a monster, disrupting your opponent's turn 1 combo. But if you open a fire and a dark, you can instead summon Raisin from deck and use his pop, which requires the same attributes, while also searching Caesar Valius, who can bounce back Holly Sue to summon himself, and put the earth reveal back in hand to use his own pop. Now, this is not the most consistent play ever. It has some pretty specific requirements for 3 of the opening 5 cards in your hand, but it makes this deck among the very few to have some true turn 0 plays that heavily disrupt the opponent. This deck is currently the most represented deck in the OCG, but of course there's a bit of a catch. In a pre-K9 format, it's unclear where Vol alone will land in an untested metagame that excludes the decks that dominated the OCG's Dwad format, and includes world premieres that Vol has never had to contend with before. Regardless of its exact tier in the meta though, this deck is definitely a lot stronger and more capable of making full use of all of its options. Oh, and Rocks kinda just exists to clear Vanquisher out of the EMZ, I think. I don't know, pop 1 is also okay if that's what you want to do. Chef de Nouvelle is a light fiend pendulum that searches a Nouvelle the turn it's activated, pops out of the scale when a monster is summoned to your opponent's field, can quick effect target a monster to give it up to 3 stars, 2 more effects on this card alone lock the fuck in, can banish a recipe from hand, deck, or grave to copy its ritual effect, and if he's tributed he goes back to the kitchen. Nouvelle's recipe book, Recette de Nouvelle, stands all your opponent's monsters while you control a Nouvelle monster card, makes your opponent pay for every time a monster is tributed by a ritual, and when you summon a ritual, you can point at it, search a recipe or Nouvelle card, then give the target a Hey, where the fuck did it go? An angry burger! I'm so angry, I'm gonna bite you with my burger teeth! Is actually just hungry, which is pretty relatable if I'm being honest. Can trade itself from hand for a Nouvelle monster from deck, makes your opponent attack it, and can quick effect tribute an attack position monster on either field to summon the original Hungry Burger, baby! You thought you could replace me? You're a Lunchable slider and I'm a quarter pound of pure Colombian Angus! So like, this shit is still Nouvelle, make no mistake, it still has a bunch of structural issues around the amount of bricky in-between combo pieces you have to play, but let's take an honest look at what these new ingredients bring to the table. Chef kind of does everything. If what you seek is a 1-card combo, this deck can do what I'm pretty sure is the shortest one in history. Not the worst, but the shortest. By using Chef to search Bagri, you can pass, making your opponent think you bricked, but once they special summon twice, you can shmove the Chef to the monster zone, make it a 6, and then copy a recipe to summon Bagri. And even though you're copying a spell effect to summon him, he'll see that he was summoned by a Nouvelle monster effect, meeting his condition to tribute all your opponent's monsters. And then if your opponent is dumb enough to put something in attack position thereafter, Bagri can sack it to summon Angry, who brings up an interesting point of discussion. While you could wholesale replace Hungry and be satisfied with your new brick for Bagri being Rhoda if you draw it, and all-out attacks once it hits the board, it still gives you the option to play the original Hungry as a jank way to add one more tribute to your end board that keeps alive the spirit of how funny it is that this deck summons the Hungry Burger. So with just 1 card activation and 0 summons on your own turn, you can technically end on a board wipe and then 2 pops thereafter if a lot of things go right. In a longer combo with multiple courses, Recipe Book is a useful tool both for keeping all your opponent's monsters standing up straight and for targeting any of the smaller Nouvelles that need a bit of encouragement to do the deck's gimmick, while the attached Search makes that effect less of a vestigial afterthought. All 3 of these cards saying Search on them is good for consistency, and Chef being another pendulum gives Concours more options than just Poissonnière. But Chef also being a light fiend randomly lets the deck do some Fiendsmith stuff. I hope by now you understand the Demono problem that makes light fiend pendulums suboptimal, but one thing you can always do, even under Concours lock is just pass on Requiem so you can use Lacrima for Paradise. And not to be overlooked is that Searching Chef makes Tract and Engraver potential starters as well. Tessera the Primal Squire summons itself by revealing a Monarch spell trap from hand, gives you an extra tribute summon, and when it hits the grave summons a Squire Vassal Snake Eye Ash from deck but locks you from the extra. Eidos the Underworld Monarch surges a Monarch spell trap or Mega Monarch on summon, changes the attribute of a monster on field, and when a big enough guy is tribute summoned while he's in grave, he can either add himself back or summon himself. Revolt pitches a card to painful choice 3 monsters with Monarch or Squire stats but locks you from the extra, and can banish itself from grave to summon a Squire from hand. Master Plan mills a Monarch back row, and when it's banished can search a Monarch with the same attribute as an opponent's monster, then immediately normal summon Zaborg, Mobius, Thestalos, Grandmarg, Ryza, or Caius. And Monarchic Perfection can banish a Monarch back row from grave when your opponent special summons to Zaborg, Mobius, Thestalos, Grandmarg, Ryza, or Caius your opponent once each. You ever had a friend that just doesn't want to be helped? Like, the more you try to dig them out of the rut they're in, the clearer it is that they like it there. Welcome to Monarch, the deck that can't become fun or interesting without divine intervention at the very least. There's at least 6 engine-adjacent floodgates, including an engine requirement floodgate, and no clear path out of this mess aside from making the deck tier 1 again so we have an excuse to ban 9 cards from it. But this support doesn't do that, and instead tries in vain to give you other things to do that superficially look cool, like End on Perfection to potentially interrupt your opponent 6 times at various tiers of strength. Your opponent's first 3 special summons getting popped, spun, and banished, not necessarily in that order, gives you 3 ways to disrupt your opponent of roughly equivalent value. Popping 2 back row in any one set card is useful into other matchups like Labyrinth, and ripping the 5th card out of hand after your opponent has to commit the first 4 cards to the field can strangle them out of most of their options. On the same wavelength, Master Plan can be used on your opponent's turn by banishing it with Perfection or Prime, so you can use one of the same effects while also getting to use your Stormforth tribute, but it is of course matchup dependent, so while you can comfortably Caius the average Mitsurugi opponent, you'll have to fit in Zaborg if you want to threaten a pure Ryziel player, and you'll have to be careful with that Caius when you're up against Malice. Its main effect is nothing to write home about anyway, so fitting this interaction into a list might be more trouble than it's worth. The other 3 cards on the other hand are more than a consideration. Tessera, Eidos, and Revolt are massive consistency boosts, giving you much stronger ties between the different groups of cards you need to search. Revolt doesn't give you full control, but lets you get multiple Monarchs or Squires into rotation all at once to get things like Eidos and Erebus at the very least in the graveyard from which you can add them back later on. And getting Tessera either in hand to be summoned by its own effect or with Revolt, or in grave so you can get right to Adia. Its second effect gives you yet another tribute summon so you can tribute summon a second Monarch in a single turn, and oftentimes even a third since you can conserve the normal summon by specialing Adia. And Monarch Eidos is both a good thing to use one of those extra tribute summons for, and a self-sufficient combo piece since he can special summon himself from grave and will still trigger search. Since he comes back after being tributed, he works well in the role of tribute fodder, and by changing his attribute, he can help to enable the effects of the Mega Monarchs he can search. Summoning himself also gives you more ways to make rank 6s, but Tessera and Revolt both locking you out of the extra makes that kind of negligible. So what does the deck do but fall into the same old habits of ending on Domain, Vanities, and maybe Erupt or Majesties, and if you feel like spicing it up, Perfection to help you protect your floodgates. Super Quantal Fairy Zatan is a level 1 zombie that summons itself if you control a quant, then matches its level, and contribute itself and milk a non-dark quant to summon a quant from deck. Black Layer can pitch a card to summon itself when your opponent activates a monster effect, makes himself and a quant from grave into a Quantal Mech Beast on summon, and when he hits the grave, he searches a quant spell. And Layer 19, Sudden Incursion, Super Quantum Black, is a quick play spell that either turns a monster sideways, summons a quant from deck if you control a quant, or sets a quant trap from deck that you can activate this turn. There's more than meets the eye to this wave of quants, beyond just the modernization of its lines, giving it multiple 1-card combos that lead to the king of the computer. Zatan can summon Alfan from deck, while also milling a name that you can trigger like White Layer that can also be reborn later in the turn by Red Layer or attached by Black Layer. But you can also take that opportunity to mill Alfan Spike so that after resolving Alfan, you can banish it to set up Magna Carrier and relieve the pressure to search it off of blue and black. Black searching Layer 19 gives Alfan another good reveal that doesn't care if it gets summoned or milled, meaning that although you do have to learn 3 times as many combo lines, the lines do work no matter what Alfan hits. Blue Layer can search Zatan, who can freely summon himself, making blue a starter as well, and by extension E-Telly, and by further extension, Mind Procedure. Remember him? In lines that use blue early, you can use black layer to search carrier, and if you draw layer 19, you can use black to search another layer 19 because its 3 effects are separate once per turns. Meaning you can lead a turn by using it to set Magna formation, protecting your whole turn from targeting, and then still use the Theosis effect later on. But you can also set a copy of layer 19 so that you can whip out black layer on your opponent's turn and use this effect to add another Xyz to your board with its quick effect enabled if you have the right color engrave. Which takes us to black layer's uses. As an Alphan target, milling him gets you to layer 19, while summoning him lets you make an Xyz for free while still being able to get him engraved for the search either by proactively detaching from Luster X to negate your own guy, or by linking off the Xyz for Gravity Controller or SP if you have an extra body. But just like having an extra layer 19 at the end of the turn, having an extra black layer in hand gives you the ability to make another Xyz on your opponent's turn, which can even be done as early as turn 0 by pitching the right name. It's of course luck of the draw which one you can make, but a hand trap Magnaliger or Ouroboros can be an unexpected threat to your opponent, and even just Luster X is pretty strong on account of getting to trigger both white and black searches. Primite Fusion summons a Dragon Fusion by shuffling back material, including a Vanilla from field, grave, or banished, and can banish itself from grave to search a big Primite monster. Primite Dragon Brazilius is a fusion of a Primite and any number of Vanillas that gains 10 bucks for each, floodgates any monster with less stars than the number of Vanillas on field or in grave, and when he's sent from field to grave summons a Vanilla from deck. First the Dragon Lords is also here. He's like, alright I guess, I'm not gonna talk about him though, but he's with us in spirit. Like my dad. This wave is sort of like Vanquish Soul in that I think the most successful use for them involved a Justice Hunter's archetype, but it was only like the 5th best build of it, so I'm only really bringing it up because it involved Vanilla. And as a weird matter of coincidence, that same Justice Hunter's archetype is also routinely cited as the best matchup for Brazilius' Floodgate effect, since being realistic, you'll only be on 1 or 2 Vanillas maybe. But enough looking into the future, what can we do with this stuff now? Well, one option is to use it as an engine for Seals and Primite Fiendsmith. By making Barrel into Spirit, you can search Mausoleum, which can mill any Vanilla for some reason, including Dippity. Then by using Fusion, which you can search with Load or Barrel, depending on which one you started with, you can shuffle back Barrel and Dippity for Brazilius, and then link off your 2 dragons for the FTK, which then triggers Brazilius to summon out the Dippity to do full Fiendsmith combo. That's I guess a more elegant way to get Dippity on board than Roar or Load while getting an extra disruption along the way that plays alright into Nib. Blue Eyes probably doesn't need it, but in that deck you can also wield as a way to make Tyrant Dragon if you want.
Oh my god, yes is what you need to say whenever Ray comes on stream.
Oh my god, yeah.
Sky Striker Special Maneuver Lemnis Gate is a quick play that can shuffle back an equal number of aces and striker spells from grave to bounce a card for every 3, and can banish itself from grave when a striker is summoned to link summon a striker ace. Sky Striker Ace 0 is a link 2 of 2 aces that searches a striker spell on summon and can quick effect tribute itself to summon both Ray and Rose, then pop a card on field. This support gives strikers some slightly more proactive plays that can give them a more consistent turn 1 setup from which to start their resource loop. Since Ray can tag straight into 0, you can consistently use her, Engage, or Hornet Drones to get 0 search and pop. While 0 can search any of your spells to set turn 1 like Hornet Drones or Shark Cannon, she can also just search Engage to broaden the search pool to include monsters, maybe get the draw, and of course put an extra spell engrave. And that extra spell is important if you intend to use Lemnis because you'll need at least 2 spells and 2 aces engraved to get even 1 bounce. But what sets Lemnis apart is not just the strength of non-targeting, non-destruction removal, but also foregoing the requirement to keep your main monster zones clear, meaning you can choose to end on more than just 0 in the EMZ, but also that you can resolve 0 first, summoning Ray and Rose to the main monster zones without issue. And after using both, you can use Ray to tag into another striker, triggering Lemnis to link it with Rose into Zeke. And although the effects of 0 are mutually exclusive, you can choose to give up the search and the pop to instead just summon 2 level 4 bodies and make Baguska. Imagine the genuine fear instilled by a Baguska Eagle booster. Secretarion Dragon is a fusion of a spellcaster and a dragon that loses 100 for each of your banished cards, can target a dragon and a spellcaster engraved to reborn one and bottom the other, and floodgates all your opponent's dragon and spellcaster monsters. The one and only, the world's greatest, the Starham is a level 3 synchro that can pitch a card on summon to bring back one of its materials as a tuner, and can pitch 2 cards to reborn himself. Uka no Mitsune no Onari is a link 2 of 2 lights with a beast in there somewhere that resets a quick play spell on summon, protects field spells from targeting, and when he's destroyed pops a card and or burns for 15 based on how many field spells are up. Valon, the Super Sai Sky Blaster, is a generic rank 5 that can quick effect book a monster, and when he hits the grave he can pop a set card. You ever have a conspiracy theory that's just true? Like, there's no reason to believe it happened, but also you've just decided that's what happened. I think Konami heard that people liked the Draco Tail mirror, that it was actually really fun, skill testing, and went, we're not doing this again, and printed the floodgate for the Draco Tail mirror. And in your anger, it seems you killed the Blue Eyes White Dragon's competitive chances. No, that's them. Ukano Mitsune is kind of a nothing burger! You thought I'd stick to my own segment, you stupid son of a biscuit? We're snorting Parmesan on Mars, soy boy! Meanwhile, Starham acts like a sort of upgrade to Metal Marcher, being a non-tuner that summons back either of its materials, so any deck that can make a level 3 synchro can immediately convert it into a 4 or a 5, and if you're willing to dump even more of your hammed, you can bring him back to make a 7 or 8. Valon is among the best generic rank 5s, competing with Vamana, who negates but doesn't remove, and Nash Knight, who requires extra deck bricks, which are real. For the time being, you might consider him in Vol with Su and Jiaolong. Meanwhile, its graveyard effect makes X the Everything Raziel into MST, covering more bases than you thought were even left after Aggregator dealt with all the face-up cards. Gorgon of Zilophthonia is a generic Link 3 reptile that you can't V-Link with, can't be destroyed by battle or monster effects while it points to nothing, and negates and gains the attack of anything it points to. This card is an odd duck. Alone, she stuns 3 whole zones, leaving your opponent only 3 to work with to remove her, which maybe the remainder of your board can manage better, but the more relevant use case for her is with IP, who can chain to a monster effect to summon her to whichever EMZ can reach that opponent's monster, negating it on resolution. This changes the dynamic of any board state with IP, similar to Underworld Goddess, presenting the possibility of an immediate disruption upon her resolution rather than on a new chain like SP. And furthermore, just being a quick monster negate after a year without Apollo returns that element of disruption to generic Link spam boards. Your opponent can play around it by filling their EMZ early so that 2 of their zones are safe, but that brings us to another element to consider, which is what she can do in the main monster zone. By putting her in the center, she can stun both EMZs, complicating lines for Link decks like Malice, but if you'd like to use your own EMZ, you can push her off into the opposite corner of the board to only point at your opponents. And you can have full control of where to put her by linking her and a Fiend into Abao to revive her to whatever zone you need. It's time to play the game that would have been banned for slow play, Lightning Round. Darkflare Swordsman milks a co-conspirator Flame Swordsman from extra to summon himself, and can sack himself to summon one from deck. This card's not only a good consistency piece to get Fighting Flame without even using the normal, it also gets Flame Dragon engraved so you can equip it and Salamandra to Flame Swordsman and fuse them into Doom Dragon. Does that, like, do anything? Not exactly. There's not really a good thing to link off Doomed and Swordsman into that's both a fire to equip Chain to and a good thing to end on. Since you don't use your normal summon, any extra effect monster in hand like a hand trap can get you to Promethean Princess, which has the added benefit of giving you a way to get Chain engraved, and if you laddered through Rabbit, did you know that you can link off Rabbit if you don't use the effect? You can use Chain to fuse Rabbit and Doomed into a second Doom to push something. But that's still only 3 disruptions on like a 1.6 card combo, so nothing to crank your shit insane style for. Miasma Dragon Tistina searches a Tistina monster on summon, and comes back when it hits the grave while a field spell is up, but locks you to Tistinas from hand or grave. This card actually does kind of fit into Tistina's empty spaces, giving you a good mill for Divine Domain that'll come back to field and search Demigod. If you started the combo with Sentinel searching Fallen, or filtered through Sentinel to get to Demigod, you can bring the bird back and link it off with Demi before reviving Demi with play, so you can make Varadras, giving you an okay board of 2 generic extra deck monsters that don't actually love you. This card's awful. I don't even think people who like Ashen want to talk about it. Kaiba Man, the legend, is a light warrior tuner that can summon Blue Eyes on summon if you can prove that you're playing 3 copies, and can banish himself from grave when Bluey is summoned to search a Blue Eyes monster. So this does work with all your level 1 light tuner support like Mausoleum and Sage and whatnot. Only thing it can't do is be made into Spirit, but that's not really a big deal when his purpose is to be immediately turned into a level 9 synchro. The issue is that this deck had no trouble making those, so one more way to do it isn't really worth much. Meanwhile, his opportunity cost of playing the 3rd Bluey is pretty much a deal breaker. Argo Star's Adventurous Arion is a generic rank 4 that you can slap on top of an Argo Stars monster, searches an Argo Stars spell on summon, and can detach 2 during the standby phase to place up to 3 Argo Stars continuous traps from grave in the back row. Making this bad boy midway through an Argo Stars combo by ranking up one of your traps into it is an alright way to either search the field spell so that Todo can focus on searching Edio, or to search Giant Slaying while its extra normal is live for a free body. What you might really hope for is that searching Giant Slaying would make it a starter on its own, and it is not that. You see, Giant Slaying needs there to be a trap monster on board to use its extra normal, so to start the combo with Arian, you'll need to make a rank 4 without using your normal summon. X is the home for free speech. Sudden Thunder Swamp can pitch a card on activation to search a trap monster, and if a card is destroyed, you can search a card of the same name. This card's also a neat addition to Argo Stars since it can give you more control over which of your generic trap monsters you get access to, letting Rabbit focus on Anguish Pattern while Swamp can get your Apophis traps. But to that end, it's kinda just the same as, drawing one of them. If you draw more trap monsters, you'll end on more trap monsters, and Thunder Swamp is just more copies. The discard cost is a little rough in the early game, especially since you're already discarding for Dodo, but the second effect can make that up handily over the course of a grind game. Trap Hardleg pops a back row you control to set a normal trap from deck that you can use this turn if you have 3 traps in grave. Unlike Trick and Track, Hardleg doesn't lock you out of traps after using it, and uses a resource you have in abundance in trap decks, but still incentivizes you to use it a little later in the turn by requiring you to have already gone through a couple traps already. And there's nothing stopping you from just chaining Hardleg to the second trap you activate to pop the one currently resolving, and putting the second and third trap in grave to turn your new one online immediately. Not a bad addition to a deck like Labyrinth that can set it with Lady to push the responsibility of picking what the best trap to set is until the last moment, and can loop it with Lovely so that you can get a new trap every turn. I also like the interaction of using it to pop a set rollback that maybe you don't have a better way to get out of your hand.
Quick paragraph about RB.
Okay, I'm not gonna do the formal how do you do about these because they're only okay. Any way to make Booster can get you to Funk Dock, which gets you to one of the Gotens who can summon themselves for free. And rather than just making Brute Blues right then and there, you can make Clockwork and use Booster to reborn the material and link off Booster and Clockwork for blues so that you can search the other Goten and end on a pop and a spell negate. The issue is that outside of Stage Landing, which is kind of crazy for just doing the whole combo in one go, the deck doesn't have any one-card starters in Archetype, which is sort of antithetical to the nature of their extenders. All the main deck monsters are Tatsu, so if you start with Scrap Recycler or Tetherwolf and get disrupted, you're stuck with monsters on board that scare the hose. What I'm hoping to see from Wave 2 is some sort of actual normal summon for the deck, and maybe if there's time, a payoff that isn't quite as reliant on Brute Blues.
Do you have All-Star lore update?
Wait, Dia Bellstar? Thought you died. Morgana the Witch of Eyes is treated as a Morganite card, searches a Morganite spell on summon, can negate an attack by banishing a Morganite spell from grave, and if you have 3 or more in grave, you can zero out all your opponent's monsters. Guilt Gripping Morganite locks you out of monster effects in the hand, lets you summon without tributing, and makes spell traps that pay life free for the rest of the duel, and can banish itself from grave to bottom a Morganite from hand and draw a card. Alright, so here's the long-awaited punish for choosing to skip the first 2 Morganites, now it's actually a thing. Similar to how Gimmick Puppet appeared to be Konami's attempt at reclaiming the concept of an FTK and do it in a way the company signs off on, this seems like sort of an attempt to make more of an archetypal structure to stun. Morgana gives the deck more of a traditional normal summon that can get you to Time Tearing so you can start getting your double draw phase as soon as possible, and have the extra normal for Pachycephalo. And her other 2 effects provide more protection against your floodgates being outed in battle. As a Morganite card, she can be searched with Succumbing Song, and like Succumbing Song, Guilt Gripping gives you more ways to get rid of Morganites in hand that you've already applied. Meanwhile, its lingering effects give you even more efficient ways to use tribute summons like Vanities and Majesties, and subsidizes your Solemns to keep them all alive. Since she's dark and only activates on field, Morgana works under Impulse and Songs, and while we're at it, she doesn't insist upon herself so much that locking yourself out of using her with Purge is that much of an adjustment. So in 2025, you can build a stun deck that actually looks like a deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards equipped with a Stratos and hand traps, but it's still the same old stun you know and love that only works once and loses every game 2 and 3. And yeah, that's pretty much everything in the set worth mentioning. But you're not here for that, are ya? No, you're here for the show. You're here to see the monkey bang his cymbals. Sorry, actually, Disney owns the copyright to a monkey with cymbals. You're here to see the monkey bang on his little drum. You guys remember Woot.com? My dad used to love Woot.com. So basically, it was like this online store where every week they'd have like this limited release drop of some random crap. Like, there's actually no better way to describe it than that. It was just random crap. But my dad would buy it for the bit, and, like, sometimes it'd be something funny that would, like, make me and my brother laugh. And the big one I remember is what we called the Woot Monkey. And, like, it was this toy monkey with stretchy arms that you could just pull on, and they snap back and hit your hand really hard, and it hurts, so that would suck. But, like, when you did it, it made this monkey noise, like, just like that, and we thought the noise was really funny. I'm stalling because I don't really want to do this. Go 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 Goblinberg is a level 4 warrior that summons a non-warrior Go 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 from hand, deck, or grave on normal summon, but locks you to Xyz, and when it's detached for cost, it can search a Dodo monster. Dodo warrior is a level 6 that can milk a Dodo to summon itself as a 4 but lock you, and when he's detached, he searches a Zubaba. Zubaba Knight is a level 3 that on summon either searches a Zubaba and matches its level, or pops a level 4 lower defense position monster, and searches a Gagaga when he's detached. Gagaga Gambara Knight can reveal Gagaga from extra to summon itself and either summon another Ga from hand or rotate a monster. And when he's detached, he searches a Go. Ga Utopic Tactics protects Utopia and Utopic monsters from destruction and targeting, can make 2 monsters including a Ga any level you want, and when a Utopia is Xyz summoned, you can pop a card. Xyz Unbreakable Barrier is an Omni-Negate counter trap while you control an Xyz that can then detach 2 materials from your field to pop something, and can banish itself from grave to attach a Utopia from grave to an Xyz you control. Ga Girl is a sort of fake generic rank 4 that can detach a material if it has an Onomot attached to it to search a Ga, Onomot, or Xyz card, and gives any Utopic future it's attached to a second attack. And number F0 Utopic Future Zexal is treated as a rank 1 because level and rank 0s would fuck up a lot of established rulings, but look at how much aura they have. Can be made with any 2 Xyz monsters of the same rank, gains 5 for every rank on your field or your opponent's grave, lightning rods all attacks and targeting effects, and when your opponent activates a monster effect on field, it can detach a material to steal a monster and become indestructible for the turn. These cards facilitate a decently strong and expressive rank 4 strategy that doubles the advantage that each Xyz you make can generate by getting searches just by attempting to use their effects. Let me actually pull up a diagram to help explain. Much better. Alright, so your game plan mainly revolves around this search loop here, with Goblin searching Dododo, Dododo searching Zubaba, Zubaba searching Gambara, and Gambara searching another Goblin for follow-up. And your main priority starting off is going to be making Girl, who can search Pickup for Para, so that right off the bat, you trigger one of the materials to get a name to hand, and use Para to get 2 more. Your best starter is going to be Goblin, searchable with Rhoda, Grand Entrance if you want, which can summon either Glove or Gigas, because you also need a copy of Glove in deck to mill with Dododo, so no point in trapping a second copy underneath Girl. Dodo is another good starter, and a good extender that makes rank 4s on his own without needing any particular card on board, so he can help you play through Nibiru, which you can force out early by threatening to make Draco future with Girl, and your second rank 4, which would probably be Eclipse Twins because it both forces Nib as early as possible and uninterrupted gives you further protection for UDF. But did you know is soft once per turn? So here's a scenario: as your opponent plays through your whole board, but then you nib them, searchable with Granite, and get UDF back with a negate, but I'm getting ahead of myself by miles. When Dodo is detached, he can search Zubaba, but here's the thing, is that all 4 of them can also search Utopic Onomatopoeia, as he's treated as all 4 archetypes, making him a crucial nexus point in the deck, interacting with every facet of it except Goblinberg's summon. The main ways you'll get him on field is either with Glove or with Gambara, who, like Dodo, is a flexible extender, who doesn't care what the board looks like as long as you still have Magician and extra. Switching something to attack can occasionally come up to out Baguska, or to use Future to steal something big and swing with it. The sort of odd man out in this wonky quartet is Zubaba, who can search Bancho on summon and become a 4, making him a rank 4 on his own as well, but he's clearly not as good of a normal summon as Goblin, since he makes pretty inefficient use of the search Bancho with no target engraved for its effect, and because he needs to resolve to become a 4, with your only way to fix his level from that point being pickup. He can function perfectly fine as a 1-up to someone with Onomatopoeia's Pendulum summon that seriously could be so much worse to draw. I don't want to make him sound like this awful brick. But anyway, after summoning UDF, you generally have somewhere in the range of 7 level 4s of material to work with, giving you some decent options to build your board with. You can make Ptolemaeus and rank up into CDI to pair your UDF negate with an Omni negate, or with the same 3 materials, you can make Alambertian to search Astraltopia, who can get you either Unbreakable Barrier or Numbers Protection. Barrier is both an alternative search for Girl, which gives you an option from old Charmy lines, and has the added quirk of its disjointed pop, which, as we've seen in things like Varadros and Cipher, can yield additional value over a traditional negate and destroy. And we'll actually come back to that in a moment, because first I'd like to talk about UFZ. Being able to use both numbers and not numbers makes him a lot easier to summon than UDF, because he can be made with Dugaris, whose effect can draw you extra hand traps before being stuffed under Zexal with Alambertian. As an interruption, he's fine. His timing's a little awkward, needing to chain to a monster effect on field exclusively, but thinking about it as something to make with 2 Xyz monsters who have already gotten value, it's not hard to appreciate that he does anything at all. His most useful skill is having the biggest target on his head in the world. Not only does Zexal protect UDF from being targeted, forcing your opponent to go after him with things like Impermanent Aggregator, if they don't out Zexal quick enough and let his steal resolve, he becomes indestructible. So if your opponent doesn't take down your barrier quick enough, it'll only get more unbreakable. And what, you thought we weren't gonna circle back around to it after I said we would? If your opponent does remove Zexal early enough, you can turn him back on by using Barrier to detach Eclipse from UDF, triggering it to revive Zexal. Even if they negate but don't destroy Zexal, you can proactively use Barrier to destroy your own monster just so that Eclipse can turn it back on. But pivoting off from the open-ended nature of the deck's payoff, there have been a couple of attempts at mixing this deck with other rank 4 strategies, the most prominent of which, of course, being Ryzial. The simplest way to incorporate these cards into Ryzial is to just play 3 Dodo and 1 Glove to make Duo Drive without the normal summon, A Loubob for Dodo to search isn't even necessary because Duo Drive detaching for effect won't trigger any of these effects. But to avoid fumbling value like that, other lists have ventured to play much larger packages with Girl and Bancho and sometimes even the spells in Goblinberg, so you can make Banshee to search ice and make UDF to protect it, or do even more Ouroboros loops. But to borrow some of Sunny's thoughts on this build, it plays more like a full combo deck than a Raziel deck and isn't really that good. And from what I can tell, the more conservative Onomot packages are being experimented with less as a factor of their innate strength, and more due to the limitations the deck faces with the OCG card pool, trying to make up for the consistency lost to all the banlist hits, a problem that TCG Raziel has already accounted for with Mitsurugi. And that brings us to our final speculative point, the possibility of Mitsurugi being the best Onomot variant. Over time, it's looking more and more like King of the Fairlimps is just the best rank 4 in the game. Not at all unlike any deck that can summon 2 monsters, having good reason to consider the Fiendsmith package, any deck with 2 level 4s can pivot into Mitsurugi. So maybe Onomot's best hope for competitive success lies with one of the best engines in the format that plays well with the Xyz lock being accessible through a rank 4. But it's unlikely because it only exacerbates the deck's weaknesses, and the Mitsurugi combo can't pivot back into Onomot as well as it can into Raziel. Anyway, that's pretty much it. If you want to do well with the deck, you'll probably have to heavily tailor the endboard to the metagame, because rank 4 endboard pieces are actually kind of situational. But you do have a lot of good options for going second, because there's tons of decent board breakers like Exciton and Castel you can fit in the extra if you don't waste too much space on turn 1 sealing. So I'd say you can do okay with this deck as long as you know what you're doing. Now take a shot every time you thought about Droll.